Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad Wakai. That's Tyson Gentry. Tyson, we're rolling on in our preview season here as we did the SEC previously. We got the Big 12 now. We're going to follow it up with the ACC coming out next. But Tyson, as we're doing the prep stuff and, we do our research and everything for these conferences, it really seems like it's a one-horse race. We're going to throw another team in here for our favorites tier as a two-horse race. But, man, the Big 12, it doesn't seem that the conference that's had a lot of parity throughout its history is going to have a ton of parity this season. I'll tell you that.
Oh, and we're happy to eat our words. But on the surface here on August 17th, 2026, this does not look like a conference that is going to have it. It doesn't feel like it's going to have multiple representatives in the college football playoff. And that's something that we can get into maybe to sneak in. Like, you don't know, because the rest of the conference, Brad, doesn't look very good. And so I think that might have some record inflation going on in the Big 12, which is a tale as old as time. But we sit here and we do the contenders tier, the favorites tier, and then, kind of the rest of them. And for the Big 12, we had to sit for 20 minutes before we started here. Like, I don't know if the rest of them can we include 9 teams in this? So it was a good thought exercise, I think.
It was. It really sums up the Big 12. And like Tyson said, this year, if you're tuning in for the first time or if you're tuning in for the multiple times that we've done this now, we've broken it into 4 tiers for each Power 4 conference, and we're breaking the teams down into the favorites tier, the contenders tier, kind of like who we think, if everything goes right, that they could potentially win this conference, then the middle of the pack, and then the bottom feeders tier. And that's how we're rolling things this year. Before we get started, smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Give us 5 stars if you haven't already. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, however you be listening as well. Let's get this thing rolling, Tyson, with the favorites, because like I said, there's really one big favorite, and that's Texas Tech, minus 105 as we're recording this on FanDuel to win this conference. And I think for good reason, right? They go 12-2 last year. They completely dominated everybody. They have a ton of NIL capital with their oil money, with Cody Campbell running the show. And they've been able to buy players. They've been able to buy talent through the transfer portal, through high school recruiting. And I think Joey McGuire is actually a really good head coach, Tyson. And maybe he's not like the super genius type of guy, but his ability to be like the CEO type and delegate and oversee and really kind of run things as a CEO is worked wonders here, I think, at Texas Tech. Now, 35-18 as he's going into his 4th season, but I think he's really got things rolling now. The quarterback situation dominated the offseason. There was going to be Brennan Sorsby. Then the gambling stuff happened. Now he's not playing. So it's Will Hammond who's coming off the torn ACL.
The gambling stuff had been happening. That was a problem.
Right. We had found out about it. That's a better way to phrase it. So Will Hammond coming off a torn ACL. We'll see how he looks. Cameron Dickey back as running back. Jacoby Williams back. I think it's going to be a lot of ground and pound. They combined for almost 2,000 yards, 20 touchdowns themselves. But here's the numbers, Tyson. Offensive yards, 48.1% is returning, 46 in the nation. Tackles, 46%, which is 48th in the nation. 87 offensive line starts, which is 31st in the nation. They have 6 returning starters, 8 if you include their transfer haul, 5 returning starters on defense, 8 if you include their transfer haul, and then the 81st toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. So it's no wonder why these guys are viewed as the favorites in this conference.
And I think that, we could talk about the defense if you want. They're going to be good. They were really good a year ago. It's been a build, something that we've talked about every offseason for the last couple of years. Was like, hey, it was 4 years ago that there was some smoke around this Texas Tech program. Like, hey, things are building here, and now we're, hopefully for them, we haven't reached the apex yet. But the season boils down to 2 things. One, how much of the offseason distraction gets over into the season. And because at the end of the day, these are college age kids and it's a lot to go through. I think, we look at them now as professionals, but if you think back when you were 21 years old, like maybe you don't handle this well. So that's like on the table for sure. But then it's all Will Hammond. And if this guy can play and just do enough, this is a team that's going to win the conference. The next team we'll talk about in this favorites tier has the experience at some of these high ticket areas. They have their own little offseason stuff going on and how that factors in. But the reality is, if Will Hammond can play, if he's serviceable, he doesn't even need to be Baron Morton. He just needs to be a above average college quarterback. This is a team that's going to win the conference.
Here's the schedule. We'll just run through it real quick. They open with Abilene Christian at Oregon State, host Houston on a Friday night game, host Sam Houston State at Colorado, and they get a bye. They host Arizona State for their homecoming game, at Cincinnati, host Arizona, host West Virginia, who's off a bye. Then they finish at Oklahoma State, at TCU, host TCU, at Oklahoma State, at Baylor, then host TCU to finish it. Tyson, anything scary in there, like at all?
No, I mean, the only thing from if you're going to bet on these games or whatever, then it's a Texas Tech late season collapse as they go on the road 2 in a row. But that early season, this is a team, they should be sitting 9-0 and 4th in the college football playoff, ranking whenever that comes out. Just be good. It's just, as we sit here again, it's the middle of August, but I don't see a way that they lose the conference at this point.
I don't either. And let's roll into BYU, because really, I think, we put them in the favorites tier because they're the second best team in this conference. Both Tyson and I think
they've got magic. We need to have a little respect for whatever the black magic is that they have down there as far as the ball bounces BYU's way, it seems.
I know. It really, they've done a great job kind of building this program too under Kalani Sitake. Now, this is 11th season, 84-45 since he's been at BYU. They're 12-2 last year. Just could not beat Texas Tech. That was really their bugaboo there. They went 8-1 in conference with their lone loss to Texas Tech, like I said. But Bear Bachmeier's back, Tyson. He's coming off a 3,000-yard season, 15 touchdowns, 7 picks, so not great there. But really, he's a dual threat. 11 TDs on the ground, 500 more yards. He was a true freshman last year. But really, you get LJ Martin, their running back, who just went for 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. That's the key.
Dude.
I'm nervous about the receivers, though. They lose some big names. That's something there, but I think, BYU could just maybe run this conference to the ground. But returning experience, offensive yards wise, 68.7% is back, 13th in the nation. Tackles, 66.4% is back, which is 4th in the nation. They get 66 offensive line starts back, which is 46th in the nation. And then all five of their offensive returning starters are from this last year's team. 7 of their defensive starters are returning, 8 if you include their transfer haul, and they have the 49th toughest schedule according to Phil Steele. So this is an experienced team led by a second-year quarterback now with your star running back coming back. I think there's a lot of reason to like BYU if you want to take a shot at anybody besides Texas Tech.
I agree, and I think that Bachmeier and LJ Martin combined for a pretty scary duo, and that goes for everyone in the conference, including Texas Tech. But you might be sitting there at home, and you're like, well, you guys said that Texas Tech had to deal with the Brendan Sorsby saga all offseason. Brad, was there anything related to BYU and the head coach that might be something that people should note?
Well, yeah, Kalani Sitake told Penn State he was coming to Penn State. And then at the last second, things changed.
Crumble
and
cookie,
he
baby.
returned to BYU. Crumble cookie, yeah, that was part of it. And a big commitment, according to the athletic director, apparently, of resources, and that they're apparently trying to renege on. So it doesn't seem like it's all kumbaya anymore like it seemed before. But again, once you get the football season started, you'll kind of put that behind. All reports are, Tyson, that BYU, everything's all hunky-dory. In the locker room, everybody's happy that Kalani Sitake stayed. They have a talent. They had their best recruiting class. So this is a talented program now in terms of how they want to recruit and how they get people into this program.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about that. And they've been, again, this is another build. We just kind of buzz by the fact that Sitake is 80 wins, 40 losses in his tenure at BYU. This is not supposed to happen at this school. When this dude showed up, it was like, BYU also plays football. That was kind of like what was going on there. And now it's become a powerhouse within the conference, and they're going to vie for a title. I don't know if you're going to run through their schedule, but I'm not super concerned there if I'm a BYU guy. I just think personally that Texas Tech's guns are bigger, and I think that's what it boils down to right now.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the only thing. If you're looking at BYU, maybe they can run into some trouble, because you host Utah Tech to start, host Arizona immediately in the conference schedule, at Colorado State, then you get your bye. At TCU, where TCU's off the bye, so you don't really get an advantage there coming off your bye. You host Iowa State on Friday. You host Notre Dame, who obviously is a title favorite here. At UCF at the Bounce House, with UCF coming off a bye. Host Arizona State, at Utah in a rivalry game, host Baylor, at Kansas, host Cincinnati. So the teams aren't necessarily the best, but Tyson, you don't get a ton of rest coming down the stretch. You can play some gauntlets in the rivalry games coming down here too.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. But we'll talk about maybe going to the Bounce House this year isn't as scary. And Utah has a whole host of change too. So we're not even sure what we're getting there.
Okay, that's our favorites tier. Let's get into the contenders tier again. If everything goes right, maybe they can win this conference. Tyson, again, we think this is Texas Tech's to lose, but injuries happen or poor play happens, things along those lines. So let's dive into Utah, because I think really they have an opportunity to potentially do some good under Morgan Scalley, who's in his first year, right? Kyle Whittingham gets pushed out. That people in the building are ready to make this change and keep Morgan Scalley, head coach in waiting. And we kind of thought this was going to happen this year. Well, Kyle Whittingham, oh, I want to keep coaching. Well, you're not going to be doing that here because we're ready to move on to Morgan Scalley. Devin Dampier stays as quarterback. Tyson's coming off a 2,500-yard season, 64% completion percentage, 24 tuds, 5 picks, added 835 more yards on the ground with 10 touchdowns. Wayshawn Parker is back, 981 yards last year with 6 touchdowns. They get Brandon Pagan in from Utah State, who had almost 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. Offensive yards, 72.1% is back. That's 6th in the country. Tackles, 46.2% is back. That's 46th in the country. Only 12 offensive line starts, though. That's 129th in the country. I think that's really something to keep an eye on here because Utah is dominated in the trenches, and it seems like they're not going to have that advantage this go around. 4 offensive returning starters, 3 if you don't include the transfers, and 3 defensive returning starters, 4 if you include their transfers. However, 62nd toughest schedule according to Phil Steele. How do you see this going in year 1 of Morgan Scalley?
Well, it's a weird deal to get a new head coach where we're like pretty damn confident in what we're going to get. Like Morgan Scalley's not run the program before, but it's felt like, he's been involved with Whittingham for the last 15 years, it seems, as they've been preparing the succession plan. So we know Utah is going to be near the top of the conference on defense. That's what they do. But we also know, and this should maybe just be the theme of the episode, is there's a bunch of quarterbacks in the Big 12. Like we should call it the Almost Podcast because Devin Dampier is almost awesome. When you watch him, you're like, this guy could be really good, and then he does something really stupid and just kind of throws you for a loop. And I feel like they don't necessarily have the horses to win this thing, and that offensive line that's the scariest part. The flip side is when you only return 12 starts and it's a new regime. Well, maybe we're going to get a scheme here that works better for the guys that are playing, and things are going to be good. But that was where they didn't feel like Utah a year ago in some of these games where it was like, oh, BYU's beating them up in the trenches a little bit or whatever else. And so what is the expectation for Morgan Scalley in year 1?
I definitely go to the bowl game. I mean, I don't think anybody expects them to win the conference, but I mean, go to a bowl game for sure.
I feel like Utah would
something
be
like that.
8 or 9 wins. I think that's a fair thing to put on this guy. But Utah wants to win the Big 12. Like, don't get that twisted. This is not a program. This is a program that was used to playing for the Pac-12 championship. And then you go to a conference that on the surface is a little similar, but I mean, at the top, weaker than what the Pac-12 was. And Utah should absolutely expect to be playing in the conference championship. That's not or playing for a conference championship, I should say, in this one. But that's not out of the realm of possibility this season. I just personally feel one school in this conference has really taken the NIL thing to a whole different level than the rest of them.
Yeah, no doubt. The only thing I'm feeling bad for is that Brock Heward, this is his guy, Morgan Scalley, and he's not on the call to be head coach Morgan Scalley instead of defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley. Oh, robbed. Let's get into Houston here, Tyson. They're coming off a 10-3 season. Willie Fritz now in his 3rd year here. Connor Wegman back as quarterback. I think that's interesting. This guy kind of flamed out at A&M. Was solid at times last year, 2,700 yards, 65% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks, added 11 more scores on the ground with 700 rush yards, which I think is pretty big, especially for him to stay healthy. They get Mekhi Hughes, who was with Willie Fritz at Tulane, transferred to Oregon, didn't play, just the fit wasn't there. Now he's coming back down to Houston. That's something to keep an eye on. This kid is really good. I think he could have a breakout season this year again. And they keep one of their best wide receivers, Amari Thomas, who almost had 1,000 yards last year, 12 touchdowns. Also, Trent Walker, they get in from Oregon State, who had 800 yards. So there's some talent out there. 64.6% of their offensive yards are back. That's 20th in the nation. 47.6% of their tackles are back. That's 41st in the nation. And they get 112 offensive line starts back, which is 12th in the nation. Now, Tyson, 5 offensive returning starters, but 10 if you include their transfer haul. 6 returning defensive starters, 9 if you include their transfer haul, and the 60th toughest schedule according to Phil Steele. This team, like if you want to take a shot on somebody, their odds to win the conference is 1,600. I think if you want to sprinkle on somebody besides the top 3 that we just discussed, it could be Houston, but you have to really believe in Connor Wegman, and I know you and I have been like, saying the guy for us.
Well, we maybe have put unfair expectations on him with some of the schools that he's played for before, and it was like, well, that's a conversation for another day maybe. But I think, what I'm most excited for, one, Willie Fritz, year 3. Like, we saw the improvement in year 2. They go 4-8 in his first year, and it was like, well, maybe he's just not cut out for this because Summerall's got Tulane rolling, and maybe it was a program thing. And then they went 10 games a year ago, and now he's bringing in some heavy hitters. I think Mekhi Hughes has potential to go either way, but I think that, it's a morbid curiosity. It's like, this could be a poster child for either side of the transfer portal. Like, this is a dude who had every suitor in the country when he chose to go to Oregon. And as you mentioned, he doesn't play, and now he's back. So we'll see did he lose all the juice or what? But if he comes back and smashes, then it's like everyone else is going to look at that like, well, just because I'm not playing doesn't mean I can't play. And so I'm going to go find where to play. I think Houston's going to be really fun, and I think that is the ethos of Big 12 football. I think Houston's going to give us everything we've come to know and expect out of this conference.
Let's wrap up our contenders tier here with Kansas State. Colin Klein taking over as the head coach, coming over as the offensive coordinator from Texas A&M. Now, of course, he was a player here at Kansas State. Avery Johnson is still the quarterback here. He's just going to be a senior. Did not have a good season last year. 2,300 yards, 60% completion percentage, 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, only 477 yards on the ground, 8 more scores. Joe Jackson back as running back, 900 yards last year with 8 touchdowns. The wide receiver core looks okay on paper. But Tyson, 68.6% of the offensive yards are back, which is 14th in the country. I think that's notable considering that Colin Klein came in and there was a head coaching change. 30.6% of the tackles are back, which is 103rd in the nation. 39 offensive line starts are back, which is 90th in the nation. So I think those are the two things you circle. And it's like, that could be where the struggles are. 6 offensive returning starters, 7 if you include their transfers. 2 returning defensive starters, 5 if you include transfers. But the 77th toughest schedule in the country, which is not too surprising because, again, this is the Big 12. But Tyson, as I'm looking at this, I think this could be like a sick offensive team with maybe a bad defense. So like play on the over until maybe some of the books catch up. But I have no idea how this season is going to go for Kansas State.
Well, I can tell you, you will play the over, and Avery Johnson will continue to disappoint versus what people think he is. And by about week 6, they're going to be blacklisted from Brad's bet book as far as teams that he wants to continue to play in the over. I don't think I'm doing it this year with Kansas State. This is a team where I've been optimistic the last couple of years, whether it was DJ Giddens or whatever as running back. It was like, this team's going to be really good. Avery Johnson can move. And now we're at a point where it's like, I'm not going to fall for it again. And I think that this is a program that they also expect themselves to compete in this conference. And I think that they can get a step closer to that this year. But this isn't a set your watch to it. Kansas State is going to punch you in the face football team. This is more of a Kansas State better win 45-35, and it's an unsustainable thing. And the turnovers, dude, like Avery Johnson's been playing too long to fumble the ball this much and to put it on the ground in big spots. We talked about the ball seems to always bounce BYU's way. Ask them about playing Kansas State. And so that's one of those things where, to me, I got to see it before I can believe it. And I don't believe it right now with K-State. With
that said, there's a lot of positive buzz coming out of Kansas State camp about Colin Klein. The energy is really good there since he's taken over. Guys seem super sharp, offensive mind, but he's really just being more the CEO type. I think he's going to be involved in the offense, but he's not doing the play calling thing. Like, he's just trying to have his hands on everything. So it'll be interesting to see how Kansas State looks under Colin Klein, going forward. But this is a place that he went to school at. So it's not like he's using this as maybe a potential stepping stone. Feels like this is the place he wants to be and get them back to what they were under Bill Snyder. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, especially if you're kind of looking at the future of the Big 12, depending on everything that happens with the NIL money, with Texas Tech and all that good stuff. But maybe Kansas State can be one of those teams that is up there in the contending tier or in the favorites tier eventually at some point. But Tyson, let's get to the middle of the pack type of teams here. And we're going to start with the TCU Horned Frogs, who lost their quarterback to the transfer portal this offseason. It'll be interesting to see if TCU was a little bit more happy about that, because they brought in Jaden Craig from Harvard, who apparently is pretty sick, dude. You can speak to him, but 2,869 yards last year, 62% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks. So it doesn't pop off the page, but apparently this guy's pretty sick, Tyson. What do you know about him?
Well, he is pretty sick, but the Ivy League in the FCS is similar to I don't want to call them the Mountain West because that feels disrespectful, but it's like the playoffs start and it's like, okay, cool. Somebody's going to shithouse these guys. And it just is what it is. And this is a guy who, whatever you have pictured in your mind is pretty close. I'm going to tell you that he's a better athlete than he looks like. He can sling the ball a little better than you think. All that stuff sounds great until Texas Tech and McGuire and those guys are across from you, and then we'll see. But if we know one thing about college football quarterback development, Sonny Dykes probably going to get, the best out of some of these guys, or a better performance than what we thought. And they have a new offensive coordinator in. How much does that matter at a place like TCU? We'll find out, right? Like Gordon Samus is going to call the plays, and so we'll see. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to get some funky TCU things throughout the season. This is another team where it's like set your watch to watch the games because it's going to be really fun. But I'm not calling for them to win 10.
Yeah, and they went 9-4 last year, and that was with some of the injuries and the turnovers from Josh Hoover. So this is an interesting team. Now, I don't think they could win. Again, that's why I put them in the middle of the pack. But again, a fun Big 12 team, something to keep an eye on. And they get 22.9% of their offensive yards back, which is 96 in the country. So pretty low there. 48.1% of their tackles back, which is 38th in the country, which is actually kind of an inverse of what you think, right? The defense is going to be potentially the strong point, or at least a strong starting point for TCU and our defensive coordinator, Andy Avalos. And then 95 offensive line starts back, which is 19th in the country, which I think is notable. I think that's big for what they want to do. 5 returning offensive starters, 7 if you include your transfers, 5 returning defensive starters, 6 if you include transfers. However, the 37th toughest schedule according to Phil Steele, which is pretty notable. It's one of the tougher ones that you're going to get in this conference that doesn't have a ton of elite teams. So I think that's something to circle as well.
Yes.
Moving on to the Arizona Wildcats, Tyson, and you want to talk about a bounce back season under Brent Brennan. I mean, disastrous in his second year. Or I'm sorry,
his first season for his job, dude.
Yeah, I felt like it, but he goes 9-4 last year, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of why we put our faith up. Now, we talk about this a lot, Tyson, when there's holdovers from the Jed Fish regime, and it was like, okay, well, we're kind of thinking we didn't really want to follow. We just didn't want to transfer. Oh, well, that's not how he did it. We did the things under the previous coach. Oh, well, this is all Brent Brennan's guys here now, and that was the case last year too. And I think he saw the step forward. Seth Dagey, offensive coordinator, which was big for them. Danny Gonzalez, defensive coordinator. I thought they took a step forward under him last year as well. Noah Fafita, yes, folks, Noah Fafita, still the QB for the Arizona Wildcats as he's going into his true senior year. 3,200 yards last season, 64% completion percentage, 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Kedrick Riscano back as the starting running back. 60% of their offensive yards are returning, which is 28th in the country. 38.7% of their tackles back, which is 71st in the country. 57 offensive line starts, 61st in the country. 59th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele, while 4 offensive starters are back with 6 if you include their transfers. 5 returning starters back on defense, 8 if you include their transfers.
Bombs away. I mean, that's gonna suit up both sides of the ball this year for Arizona because that offense is going to sling that football around. Noah Fafita is probably the best returning quarterback in this conference, if you ask me. And that secondary is going to be brutal. They're going to give up a ton of big plays. And like, if you need something to do at 8 p.m., Arizona games are going to be really fun. And I think both sides of the ball is just bombs away, baby.
I was going to say the same thing. This defensive secondary lost so much talent, Tyson. I mean, just NFL guy after NFL guy. So can they immediately replace him? Probably not. Let's go down here to Arizona State. My backyard now, Tyson, over there in Tempe, with Kenny Dillingham spurning, some may say, Michigan, staying in the beautiful weather here in Phoenix. He's going to be going to this 4th season. He's 22-17. They're 8-5 last year. A disappointing season, I think, when you look at it on paper with the returning starters and everybody who is back. 6-3 in conference was like, oh man, what happened? What kind of fell apart? Now, here's the QB after Sam Leavitt transferred out. It's Cutter Boley, who's coming in from Kentucky.
Name.
Very sick name. Stats leave you something to be desired, but 2,100 yards, 15 touchdowns, 12 picks, 66% completion percentage. Seems like kind of a rebuild here. You get Reed Harrison at wide receiver, Boston College transfer, Omarion Miller in from Colorado transfer. Harris had 673 yards, 5 touchdowns. Miller had 808 yards, 8 touchdowns. So a good way to attack the transfer portal from their perspective. but only 15.7% of offensive yards are back, which is 107th in the country. 24.5% of their tackles are back, which is 116th in the country. And Tyson, the scary thing, 29 offensive line starts, 108th in the country. So you're looking at things, it seems pretty barren. Just one returning offensive starter, 4 if you include your transfers, only 2 defensive returning starters, but 8 if you include the transfers. So this was a transfer portal heavy haul here for Arizona State. They get the 33rd toughest schedule according to Phil Steele.
Yeah, we're a pro Arizona State podcast. We're a pro Kenny Dillingham podcast. But Brad, we're going to find out like to what level can this guy coach this year. And I think that that's really the main thing to monitor here with Arizona State. It's bombs away, but in a different level because this secondary is also going to stink. There you had to rebuild the whole thing. But I just don't believe in our boy Cutter the same way we do in Noah Fafita. And Jordan Tyson isn't walking through that door. Like Miller can be great and some of this other stuff, but they've lost absolute studs, over the last couple of years. And so that's what I'm watching with Arizona State this year is, okay, I think Kenny Dillingham is a really good coach. Let's find out how good he is when the cupboard is a little bit more barren than we're used to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. This feels like a rebuild, Tyson, away or reset. It's like, all right, we had a good couple years. We got to the CFP, probably should have beat Texas. Let's see where we're at now. Let's move on here because this is a complete new era to Oklahoma State. No longer have your boy there, the mullet. He's not there, Tyson, for us to just be like, all right, what's going on here with Gundy? Eric Morris takes over. His first season, he was 22-16 at North Texas. Last year, incredible. Just what that offense was. He brings his QB with him, Drew Mestemaker, who had 4,300 yards last season, 69% completion percentage, 34 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Brings over Caleb Hawkins as running back too, 1,400 yards with 25 touchdowns last season for North Texas. Just incredible. And oh, by the way, remember the passing attack had to be somebody good. Oh yeah, Wyatt Young. That's right, 70 catches, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns from North Texas. We'll see if all these guys can make the leap, but at least there's something exciting here. And as you would expect, a complete program overhaul. 0% of the offensive yards are returning from last season.
That's one of the craziest things that we're going to talk about today. Like that doesn't happen.
It just doesn't. Like even if there's some holdover somewhere, but that's not the case. 13.8% of their tackles are back. That's 128th. Now this is what's crazy to me. 115 offensive line starts they have, which is 11th. Now that's including transfers and stuff because 0 returning offensive starters. Which you would imagine. 7, though, if you include the transfer portal. Of course, you bring in your guys. Eric Morris did. 0 returning defensive starters, but 4 if you include the transfer portal. 51st toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. Now, Tyson, this is kind of a darling for a lot of people here. I'm pushing back on this. Like, Mestemaker, people are saying he's going 1-1 when he can come out. I'm like, can we see him like in the actual Power 4 conference? I'm throwing this to you now. What do you make of Oklahoma State this season?
I think that watching North Texas play football has been one of the most enjoyable things over the last couple of years in all of college football because it's just a track meet. Like they're scoring 70 at half. It's like, holy smokes, this offense is really fun. It's going to be a different thing. This is not, as lovely as it would be if this was Curt Cignetti taking all the James Madison players with him to Indiana. It's a little bit of a different thing here because North Texas was losing some games that they should have won. If Messmaker goes 101, that would be awesome. If he goes first overall in the NFL draft, that would be – I mean, you can say whatever you want on Twitter. We watch the games. I understand what it is that I'm looking at, and I feel like this guy, I'm not saying he's Case Keenum, but I'm saying that college football-wise, he feels closer to one of those guys to me as like a holy shit, look at these numbers this dude's putting up than he does to who like Cam Ward, Fernando Mendoza, some recent guys. He seems like he could go in the first round. Like we've seen, some of the athletic traits and the physical things he can do, but there should be no expectation on Oklahoma State. You just ran through the fact they're bringing back 0 starters, and that goes for like that's absurd. And so to me, this should be let's just watch and let's see what happens here because we're not that far removed in college football where it was like, well, yeah, the coach is coming from his old school. He's going to bring some of his players with him, and they're going to suck for a couple of years. But we've accelerated the timeline of all these guys, and now Oklahoma State needs to win 7 games. If this team makes a bowl, I think you're pumped, man. What else do you want from me?
Win total 6.5, a little bit juice to the under. I think 6 games is probably what you're looking at for Oklahoma State. Tyson, You know better than anybody that I love me some North Texas. Like,
Yes.
I mean, how many times did I bet on North Texas, whether it was them
14.
laying the wood or them going on the over? I mean, my God, how many times? So I'm very familiar with Eric Morris and what was going on down there. With that said, he's not walking into the old Big 12, right? Like where it's, everybody's spread out. Like they're trying to get a little bit more pro style, a little bit more physical. So I don't know if his system is going to be able to translate here. Now, so we will see what happens along those lines. But my God, you go 1-11 last year, one of the worst seasons at Oklahoma State you can imagine. This at least is exciting. Now, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I think everybody wants it to be awesome, and everybody wants some new blood in there. Like you said, if you win 6 games, go to a bowl game, you're pumped. Have some realistic expectations on this program right now.
They were the worst team in college football a year ago.
Baylor and a coach that we did our hot seat episode.
Yeah.
We had Dave Aranda firmly on the hot seat, and I think that's accurate here, Tyson. They went 5-7 last year. He's in his 7th season. His record is 36-37. They go and get DJ Lagway in the transfer portal after a disappointing season at Florida, where he had 2,200 yards, 63% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns, 14 picks. My God, people are talking about this guy like he's the best quarterback in the country. I mean, what a fall from grace. He was supposed to go number 1, like you said. Yeah, crazy. So this is an interesting look for a Baylor offense, Tyson, that's bringing 12.4% of their offensive yards back, which is 120th, excuse me. So another little reset here on that end of the football. 34.5% of the tackles are back, which is 83rd in the nation. 93 offensive line starts back, which is 21st. So I think that's something to circle there maybe. But 1 offensive returning starter, 6 if you include their transfer haul, 4 returning defensive starters, 7 if you include their transfer haul, in the 30th toughest schedule according to Phil Steele, which I don't think helps Dave Aranda by any stretch of the imagination.
Baylor's going to look good getting off the bus. That's what I think about this year Baylor Bears team. And we did our hot seat episode. We're both pretty lukewarm on Dave Aranda keeping his job. And it doesn't help that I think DJ Lagway is one of the most overrated players, in the last 5 years of college football. Like this dude is up there with Nico, as far as like Nico Iamaleava, where it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like we saw it for a game. That game he played against LSU as a true freshman was like, holy smokes, man, this kid is going to be special. And we never saw it again. And I don't think Dave Aranda and this staff at Baylor are going to bring that out of him. And sometimes if you hit your wagon to a horse with a bum leg, it just is what it is. And so Baylor's here because we couldn't fit more teams into the bottom feeder, but I don't think that Baylor is going to surprise anybody. I don't think they're sneaking up on anybody. And I think that the biggest under the radar thing, the defense sucked. And the defense is probably not going to be any better this year. Like you just went through all the starters coming back. You can blitz as much as you want, dude. You're not Brian Flores, and this is not the NFL, and you're just going to get picked apart.
Yeah, I mean, if DJ Lagway is good, that certainly raises their floor. I don't know what the ceiling is.
How many times have we seen DJ Lagway be good?
I've never bought into the Lagway thing. I mean, how many times did I have to push back last season when we were doing our preview? Like, guys, can we pump the brakes on this kid? Oh my God, he had 1 good game. Everybody's acting like he's Joe Montana. So I'm not saying that he's going to be awesome, but now going from the SEC to this conference, it certainly opens up the runway for him to be good.
Yeah.
But let's put it this way too. If he's not good playing in the Big 12, oh boy. I mean, that's a nightmare scenario for Lagway when it comes to his career. Baylor, I think they should be in the bowl game, Tyson. I don't know if that saves Aranda's job, though. I mean, we talked about it on the hot seat episode. It just feels like things are stagnant here. It's just how much do they really care about football at Baylor? I think that's the only thing really that's a saving grace for Aranda's job right now.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to West Virginia. Now, Rich Rod is back, of course. They went 4-8 last year in his first season since returning. No offensive coordinator, which I think is funny. He's just like, I'm doing it myself. I'm calling the plays. We're in charge. He brings in Michael Hawkins as a QB, transfer from Oklahoma. Again, going to a different school. It looked good for a little bit of Oklahoma, Tyson, and the wheels fell off for Michael Hawkins. Now he gets Cam Cook in, somebody he's reuniting with from Jacksonville State. He had 1,600 yards last year, 16 touchdowns, 27.4% offensive yards back. That's 87th in the country. 17.5% of their tackles are back. That's 126 in the country. I think that's a little bit of a concerning thing. But 120 offensive line starts, which is 7th in the country. Are those good offensive line starts? Maybe, but at least this offensive line, which was horrible last season, has some experience. but we'll see if they're any good, because Tyson, it's always like, awesome. Yeah, we have a ton of the starts. Like, yeah, but those guys suck. Like, do you actually want them to be back? Like, we'll see what happens here in Morgantown. But 3 offensive returning starters, 7 if you include their transfer haul, 0 defensive returning starters, but 5 if you include their transfers. 46, toughest schedule in the country, according to Phil Steele. How do you see this thing going here for old Rich Rod back at West Virginia?
We're finally back to the West Virginia football that you and I grew up with, because they're going to have electricity at some of these skill position players. Cam Cook is one of the most – everyone keeps talking about these running backs in college football, and he doesn't get his name brought up with LJ Martin, for example, or, we talked about Hardy when we did the SEC stuff. We're going to talk about a bunch of them when we do the Big Ten, but this dude's really good too. Michael Hawkins is going to be really fun, and the offensive line is going to stink, and the defense is going to be bad. And we are back to the mid-2010s, like Rich Rod, really running this thing in West Virginia. Look, man, we just feel like I'm repeating myself with a lot of this conference, but we have clones of each other. Like, the differentiator is who's coaching them and how Brad and I think they're going to do. But if you told me that West Virginia finishes below Kansas this year in the Big 12, I'm going to go, yeah, it makes sense. Like, I can see it, but I think they're going to score a bunch. And I think that Rich Rod is going to give us entertaining sound bites. And what more do you want from a football program that is under no illusion that they're going to win a national championship?
Especially when it was just not fun on a week-to-week basis with Neil Brown there.
So bad.
It's at least if you're going to be West Virginia, like, just at least give us that electricity. And, Tyson, it's almost like you're kind of just chasing the dragon, unfortunately, like back to those Pat White and Steve Slayton and Tavon Austin days where it's like you'll probably never get back to that point. But can you at least week in and week out just be like, man, this is at least a fun watch? Even if our defense is terrible, can we at least go and score points? I think that could be coming this season. We'll see how Michael Hawkins does in this QB-friendly offense. So that's something to keep an eye on. But 5.5 is the win total juiced over. I think I could see a bowl game for West Virginia for sure.
Yeah, this is nuts, though, that we're in the middle of the pack. The win total is 5.5.
I know. This is let's get into the bottom feeders here. Let's just keep this thing rolling. And we've got 5 teams, and maybe this is unfair to a few of them to be calling them bottom feeders, but like Tyson just alluded to, this is not a strong conference, and so we're going to have to take a couple shots at a couple teams. And the first one's going to be Kansas.
Shout out Scott, man. This one's for you. We were going to put him in contenders, but we were like, you know what? Scott Matthews needs Kansas in the bottom feeders. And I'll let you get into all the stuff. But I think this would really be the one where it was like, if you had to be like, yeah, this is a middle of the pack team, that's fine. But that's that's what I'm saying with this conference is like, what's the difference?
And we need to take our shots at something here. Yes. Like, we can't all just be like towing the line, like, oh no, this team, like, Lance Leipold we like, Tyson.
Yep.
Right.
Build the statue.
6th season here. He's 27-35, which is pretty unthinkable, pretty remarkable.
It's crazy.
5-7 last year, and we're looking at it as a disappointment. It's like, what happened? It's like, are you kidding me? This is Kansas football, for crying out loud. They went 3-6 in conference. That's pretty crazy when we're talking about what they've done here before. Now they lose Jalen Daniels, right? Cole Ballard's going to take over. He's been in the system. He's junior. You hope maybe the gap isn't like there isn't a big gap between what he knows and he can kind of just step into this offense and roll. But Andy Kotelnicki back as the offensive coordinator after 2 years at Penn State. We'll see what happens there. Obviously had major success with Leipold. Dylan Edwards, Tyson, remember him? He's the running back here. He just goes from Kansas State over to Kansas. That's crazy. But 13.9% of the offensive yards are back. That's 114th in the nation. 48.7% of their tackles back. That is 36th in the nation. I think that does give you some confidence. 65 offensive line starts back, 51st in the nation. 3 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball, 6 if you include transfers. 4 defensive returning starters, 6 if you include transfers. 54th toughest schedule, according to Phil Steele. What do you make of the Jayhawks this year?
As of this recording, I don't know where the quarterback competition stands, like if Isaiah Marshall's going to get to play at all, but that's one thing to monitor there because we don't super know. Like, we know that Kotelnicki was awesome when he was here the first time. We know that Lance Leipold has had some really fun offenses. We also know that the shine has come off a little bit on these fun offenses, and part of that is because, like, when Jalen Daniels plays 4 games and then misses 3 and then plays 3, like, it's hard to continue as a head coach there and implement everything that you want to do. The defense needs to be improved, but I think that, we're sitting here like Kansas having back-to-back losing seasons is unheard of. This is a team where 10 years ago, like if Kansas won 2 games, it was like, holy shit, Kansas beat 2 people. So look, the offense should be fun, and I think that's enough, dude. I don't think that every team, especially a freaking basketball school, like one of the basketball schools, needs to be beside themselves or upset if they've got a guy that wants to be there that is turning out 4, 5, 6-win seasons. It is what it is.
Let's move into UCF. This is another team, Tyson. I think maybe it's a little bit of a stretch to call them a bottom feeder. They went 5-7 last year. They could be bad. Scott Frost in the second season back at UCF. Now, Alex Grinch, DC, Steve Cooper, the OC. They bring in Alonzo Barnett, the quarterback from James Madison. Now, he started off pretty good and petered out, 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, 8 picks, 589 yards, 15 touchdowns. Got banged up, I think, if I'm reading that correctly here. And obviously with the coaching change at James Madison, he went in a different direction, entered the portal, and he lands down in Orlando at UCF. 22.2% of offensive yards are back, which is 97th in the country. 50.5% of their tackles are back. That's 28th in the country. 60 offensive line starts back, which is 56th in the country. 4 offensive returning starters, 6 if you include their transfer haul. 6 defensive returning starters, 7 if you include their transfer haul. The 69th toughest schedule in the country, according to Phil Steele.
None of those names that you read off, Scott Frost, Alex Grinch, none of that inspired any confidence in me as I'm sitting here. Like, you're telling me, hey man, the defense needs to be improved, so we went out and got Alex Grinch. What year is it? Like, I'm not super excited. Granted, the home field advantage is sweet when UCF has it rolling just a little bit, and we know, that they're going to have. For some reason, there's a pro player on every UCF roster. I don't make the rules. Whether it was R.J. Harvey at running back last year, Malachi Lawrence, like they get good dudes in here. But I think this could go really bad. I don't think they're going to be worse in the conference because we're going to talk about some teams coming up that are really bad. But I think UCF does deserve to be in the bottom feeder here. I don't think this is a team that finishes higher than 12th or 13th in this conference.
5.5 is their win total. Over is at -144 as we're recording now. So, the expectation is that they get to a bowl game, and I think you should if you're UCF. To your point about the pro, Tyson, is it Josh Derry, the wideout coming in from Monmouth? 1,100 yards last year, 13 touchdowns. That'd be pretty sick. I know
Big
that
body.
Somebody probably was on your radar down at the FCS level.
I think he's 6'4". I have to pull that up.
I think he's a big guy too. But
yeah,
you're going to need that for some of the Alonzo Barnett throws I saw last year at James Madison.
That's what I'm saying. It's like we run through all these names, and it's like, yeah, I don't care about that.
Let's get into Cincinnati because we put Scott Satterfield on the hot seat list that we did before we started doing our previews, and there's good reason for that, Tyson. I mean, legitimately, stuff that I've gathered and stuff that I've read about what's the situation here at Cincinnati is that, like, if they have another meh season, they're probably going to move on because he went 7-6 last year. This is his 4th season. He's 15-22. Now, Cincinnati, Tyson, after what happened under Luke Fickell, what a fall. Does it fall from grace? I mean, people were like, holy smokes, Cincinnati can compete at the college football level. It's not just like a basketball school. It's Luke Fickell. Look what they did. And then you go and this is the successor, and it's completely fallen off the rails. Like, there is zero momentum surrounding this program anymore. J.C. French is the quarterback they're going with. He's transferring in from Georgia Southern. Last year had 2,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 picks, 64% completion percentage, added 6 more scores on the ground. Jabran Payne, Notre Dame transfer at running back. They have only 7.2% of their offensive yards returning, which is 129th in the country. 31.9% of their tackles back, which is 94th in the country. 62 offensive line starts, which is 53rd in the country. 3 returning offensive starters, 4 if you include their transfers. 6 defensive returning starters, 6 if you include their transfers. And Tyson, they get the 38th toughest schedule. This could be a disastrous season for Cincy.
Yeah, and you said, you have zero confidence. And then this year, you're not going to read somebody talking about a Cincinnati football preview without Evan Tangsdale being mentioned as like one of the big deals. And he's a really good player. Brad, we're talking about an offensive guard because they're bringing back 4 starters. And anytime we're leading with a singular offensive lineman at a position that's not necessarily, like having a really good offensive line certainly wins games. Having a good guard, it doesn't move the win total. Like, that's not – so to me, I think Scott Satterfield is cooked here, buddy. I don't think that this is going to be a very good football team at all.
5.5 is the win total. Juice to the under, -164. So basically, they're telling you 5 wins is the expectation here from FanDuel Sportsbook. That's pretty crazy. Man, Cincinnati, fall from grace. That is crazy. And let's keep it rolling here with Colorado in the bottom feeder section. And this hurts my heart a little bit, Tyson, but I think you and I could kind of see this coming. When they were peaking in the right direction, it was awesome and it was fun, but it was like there is a shelf life on what's going on here in Boulder under Coach Prime, and it's not because of Coach Prime. Remember, this was a dead program when Dion took it over. I mean, it's just not had boosters support. It's just not had support from the athletic department. And it feels like we're kind of going back to that right now. But 3-9 was the record last season. Brennan Marion's coming over as the offensive coordinator. I think that's where you're putting like your chips on the table. It's like, okay, this guy can bring in a competent offensive system. That's really what you're hoping for. Julian Lewis, talented quarterback. They had that weird QB carousel where they had like 4 starters at one different time last year. And it seems like Julian Lewis is the guy, former 5-star. He stuck put. Danny Scudero they bring in from San Jose State, which is huge. He had 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. Tyson, apparently he's in a boot right now. So it's like, is their best player on offense even going to be healthy? So 28.9% of offensive yards are back. That's 85th in the country. Only 4.4% of their tackles are back, which is 137th in the nation, which is an insane number. But they get 100 offensive line starts back, which is 15th in the country. And that's included losing their star left tackle. 4 offensive returning starters, which is 8 if you include their transfers. 1 defensive returning starter. 7, though, if you include transfers. So that's something to note. 45th toughest schedule here. What are you viewing this season as when you're looking at Colorado and Coach Prime?
Well, just one to see like how quickly people turned pretty hardcore last year, and I think rightfully so, because it was like Caden Salter and Lewis. These guys are going to save the program when you don't have anybody else. And then you got like, Warren Sapp is coaching the defensive line, and it's like Ocho Cinco might be out there with the wide receivers one day, and it sounds awesome, but then when you win 3 games, it's like this is just distraction. And so seeing how quickly that blows up. We didn't put Dion on our hot seat list because Deion Sanders is going to leave Colorado when Deion Sanders decides he's done with Colorado. And I firmly believe that. And I also believe that could be at the end of this year because I don't think this is going to be a very good football team. And I think that this is I don't want to say dead man walking because, again, this is a guy that can leave on his own terms. But you also have to wonder, like, it felt a lot like a passion project for Deion Sanders here when he came in. He's got his kids. He's got Travis Hunter. They get things rolling. One of them wins a freaking Heisman. And now it's like you're looking around. It's like, I don't know how bad they want to do this anymore, man.
Yeah, I know. And I'm with you there, too. He's going to name his exit date. Obviously, you had some of the health stuff, with what I think it was his toes that he had to get amputated or something along those lines. Like it's something crazy. So it's actually pretty crazy that he's even out here in the first place. It does show, I think people are like, well, is he even serious about coaching? I do think he did not need the money. The whole thing was
always a joke. It was like he didn't take a D1 head coaching job because he just thought it would be a fun side quest. The guy wants to coach the football team.
Exactly. And so I do like Deion Sanders. I know he rubs people the wrong way. He doesn't rub me the wrong way. I think, if you know freaking Deion Sanders or you're not familiar with what he was as a player and how outspoken and how confident and cocky he was in himself, I mean, give me a break. You're always going to get this guy. So I'll say this. I'm rooting for Colorado. They're not going to be good this year, Tyson. They look tiny. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the videos out there. I mean, they look like a JV team. And you're going to go and play some of these other bigger bodies that you're starting to get in the Big 12. That does not bode well for what I think is going to happen in Boulder this season.
No.
Let's finish off here with Iowa State. Another huge transition going on, and the first time in a decade, because Matt Campbell, and we'll get to Penn State in the Big Ten preview, but Matt Campbell's left after a decade. So Jimmy Rogers comes in, and this is somebody you're familiar with, so I'll let you speak a little bit more about him, but he was 6-6 last year at Washington State, which he did a good job there. Now he's taken over at Iowa State. Boy, man. As expected, there's a mass exodus after Campbell left. Only 2.9% of the offensive yards are back, which is 135th in the country. 5.1% of tackles are back, which is 135th in the country. 15 offensive line starts, which is 128th in the country. 0 returning offensive starters, 0 returning defensive starters. Only 2 on each side of the ball if you include the transfers. The quarterback they're going to roll with is Jalen Rayner, who's coming in from Arkansas State. Kind of a little bit exciting. 3,300 yards last year, 19 touchdowns, 11 picks. Added 7 more scores on the ground. But, I mean, this is a complete rebuild here for Iowa State under Jimmy Rogers.
It's going to take time. And I think that's the one thing. That's why we have Iowa State to close the show, is because this is one we're both very confident that this is not getting turned around in a year. I think timing-wise, it's tough for them, because if Jimmy Rogers leaves South Dakota State this year and goes to Iowa State, then you can bring the boys with you, because it's like, yeah, man, we're right down the road, and we're going to go play our brand of football. When you jump to Washington State, and as you mentioned, 6-6 was a good record for that football team. If you watch the games, that felt like a good coaching job to me, and I think Jimmy Rogers is equipped to do the job at a bigger conference, a more established program like Iowa State. But it will not be this year. I don't think Iowa State is going winless, but I don't think they have the talent to compete in the Big 12. I don't know if they have the talent to compete if you put them in any other Power 4 programs. It's going to be dark, and I think that's okay, because if I'm Iowa State, man, I got to get back to scaring people and putting dudes in the pros. Like, they haven't done either one of those things. At the 2022 was like probably the year where you're like, holy smokes. They got Breece Hall, they have Brock Purdy, and then 2025 they got the receivers, and nobody's left. And so, like, that's Jimmy Rogers' job. Let's get back to the point where we can put pro players in this locker room and we can build the program, and you have the keys, man. And I think that's fine.
Oh, the problem is all the pros went to Penn State.
Exactly.
That program,
that's what I mean.
That's the issue. Cupboard's bare, and you expected that. Campbell's a family builder. That's how he wants to do his program. So you expected like a bunch of people to leave, and all right, well, we're not going to Penn State. We're going to go somewhere else. Maybe the other programs that we were recruited by, blah, blah, blah. You're confident in Jimmy Rogers. You're more familiar with him. Obviously, South Dakota State. If you're not familiar, just look up how they did it under Jimmy Rogers. It was impressive. 4.5 is the win total, juiced over, Tyson. Minus 158, 5 wins. Yeah, I was going to say plus 128, but here's why I think Southeast Missouri, they're definitely not going to go winless if you look at it that way. Yeah. Maybe winless in conference, but at Iowa too for the rivalry game, that could be a shellacking. Then they host Bowling Green, which is interesting. I think Eddie George, right? He took over at Bowling Green, I believe. Host Utah, host West Virginia for homecoming, at BYU. Bye, at Arizona, who's coming off a bye, so you don't get the benefit of the bye. Host Oklahoma State, at Baylor, host Cincy, at UCF, host Kansas State. I guess there is a softer schedule there, but boy, it's I'm with you. I think if you're going to look at anything in the plus money price unders on this one, that's something to look at. All right, Tyson, that's it for a Big 12 preview.
Thank God.
Now, notice, guys, if you're here in the past, what we normally do is give out some of our win totals. We've started to get away from more of like the win total stuff because of all the transfer things. I think, Tyson, now there's not a spring portal. We could probably dip our toes in a little bit more, but that's for the future. We just like giving ball. I think that's what we're going to do on these episodes going forward. We just talk about what we think is going to happen on the football field, and maybe do a more gambling-centric episode like we do during the seasons. But we'll cross that bridge when we get here. Tyson, overall, kind of give your thoughts here before we get out of here on just what you expect from the Big 12.
You said off the top, 1-horse race, could be a 2-horse race. I feel more confident that BYU is going to compete maybe with Texas Tech than you do, but that doesn't mean I expect them to win the conference. I think that this is Texas Tech's to lose, and I think that in this day and age of college football, it's okay to look at your roster and look at your coaching staff and go, yeah, we need to reset this thing. And I think that we have a handful of Big 12 teams that already hit that button, and we're going to have way more at the end of this year that are staring that reality in the face.
Yeah, I love Texas Tech to win this conference, even with the quarterback nonsense that was going on this offseason. Too much talent, too much money. I think they're just going to steamroll. But BYU, we'll see what happens this season. If they take a step forward, they got a lot of talent too, but I like Texas Tech. Let's get out of here. Smash the like button if you're watching on YouTube. If you listen to podcast form, 5 stars. If you haven't already, share it with a friend, with your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, all that good stuff. We really appreciate your support as we get rolling into this college football season. We did the SEC preview. Go check that out. This is the Big 12 preview, of course. Next is the ACC. We will talk to you when we talk to you. Until then, guys, peace.